The 78-year-old man stood at the bakery door, a $20 bill clutched in his hand, asking the same question for the fourth time. "Do you have any bear claws?" The cashier offered a strained smile. Other customers averted their gaze. And me? I pretended I didn't know my own father. He wore the same Sunday suit, his pride and joy polished loafers, and his hair combed to the side just like he'd done for decades. On the outside, he was the same respectable man who'd raised 5 kids and worked 40 years at the same manufacturing plant. On the inside, he was saying goodbye to himself, and we all pretended everything was normal. "Dad, let's head home," I whispered, touching his arm. He looked at me like I was a kind stranger, smiled politely and said, "Thanks, son, but I'm waiting for my boy. He always picks me up here." In that moment, I knew pretending wouldn't work anymore. It never really had. But to understand that moment, we have to go back to the beginning. If you've ever cared for someone who forgot your name, leave A in the comments. Your story matters too. My father, John, was always the kind of man who never forgot anything. He remembered every grandchild's birthday, the full names of all our neighbors, the exact date he planted each oak tree in the backyard. His memory was our family encyclopedia. He held on to stories, dates, secrets, and promises like a living archive of our existence. On Sundays after lunch, he'd sit on the porch swing and tell the same stories that always made us laugh. How he met our mom at the local community dance, how he landed his first job by lying about knowing how to drive, how each of us was born and what our first words were. These stories were our heritage, our identity. He was the guardian of who we were. The first signs were so subtle that we ignored them for months. He'd forget where he put his car keys, repeat questions during conversations, get confused about recent dates. "It's just age," we'd say, normal for 75. Until one day, he called me at 2 in the morning, lost 3 blocks from home, unable to remember his own address. In that cold pre-dawn, as we found him walking in circles, we knew it wasn't just age. It was Alzheimer's. If you also miss a voice that no longer remembers yours, comment "I hear you" and tell us what city and state you're watching this story from. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support more stories like this. "Carlos, my boy, how you've grown." That was the last sentence my father spoke, truly knowing who I was. It was a Tuesday morning, over breakfast, and he noticed my grey hairs. "When did you get so much like me?" he asked, laughing. I didn't know he was saying goodbye to his own fatherhood. The forgetfulness started small, almost imperceptible. First, it was the names of his medications, then new neighbors, then more distant grandkids. But we, the family, built a silent wall of denial. When he forgot where he put his wallet, my sister would say, "Dad's always been a little absent-minded." When he repeated the same story 3 times in one day, my brother would finish it. "That's just because he loves that story." We invented excuses for every lapse: stress, tiredness, or too much on his mind, as if Alzheimer's was an unwelcome guest who would leave if we just ignored it. We bought bigger calendars, wrote reminders on colorful sticky notes, repeated information like mantras. We truly believed that love and patience would be enough to keep his mind whole. At the doctor's appointment, when the physician asked if he knew where he was, Dad confidently replied, "At Dr. Thompson's office, where I always come." A lie. It was his first time there. When asked the year, he said, 1987, the year our mother passed away. When asked my name, he hesitated, looked at me for a long moment and whispered, This is my... He couldn't finish. The doctor was kind but direct. "It's moderate Alzheimer's. It will get worse." We left the office in silence. In the car, Dad asked me where we were going. "Home," I replied. "Oh, good," he smiled. "I miss my mom." His mother had died 20 years prior. In that moment, I understood that our denial wouldn't protect him. It would only hurt us more. We still tried to pretend for a few more weeks. At family gatherings, we'd act like he was just a little confused. We'd laugh nervously when he called my daughter by my sister's name, or when he asked about people who had already passed. We were a family of amateur actors, performing normalcy in a theater of illusions. The last time he truly recognized me was 2 months after the diagnosis. I'd come home from work, tired and annoyed by the traffic. He was in the living room, flipping through an old photo album. He saw me and smiled. "Hi, Carlos. How was your day?" I replied automatically, "Tiring, Dad." He nodded with understanding, as he always did. It was only later that I realized it had been our last real conversation. The next morning, when I came down for breakfast, he greeted me politely, "Good morning, sir." I thought he was joking. "Dad, it's me, Carlos." He frowned, confused. "Sorry, sir. My memory's not so good these days." "Are you a family friend?" That morning, I buried my father for the first time. He was still alive, breathing, smiling politely at the stranger who claimed to be his son. But the man who taught me to ride a bike, who grounded me for staying out late, who gave me advice on work and relationships, that man was gone. All that remained was a gentle, lost body living in my childhood home. For weeks, I insisted on reintroducing myself. "Dad, I'm your son, Carlos." He would smile politely and agree. Of course, of course. But it was the courtesy of someone who didn't want to hurt a stranger, not the recognition of a lifetime of love. Until I understood, continuing to pretend was cruel to both of us. He didn't need to remember being my father. I needed to learn to be his son in a new way. Do you remember the last time someone special said your name? Write it here, before that memory fades too. 3 a.m. The sound of drawers opening and closing echoed through the house. I found my dad in the kitchen, dressed in pajamas and dress shoes, looking for something he couldn't explain. "Where is it?" he murmured, rummaging through every cabinet. "Where's what, Dad?" "I don't know," he replied and began to cry. This scene repeated every night. Our routine became a military-style ritual of survival. Wake up at 5 a.m. to give him his meds. Check that he hadn't turned on the stove during the night. Hide the car keys after we found him driving barefoot, lost 20 miles from home. Lock the front door from the inside to prevent him from wandering off in his pajamas. Our house became a gentle prison where the prisoner didn't understand why he was confined. My sister, Anna, moved into the room next to his. She said it was temporary until he stabilized. That was 3 years ago. She forgot what it was like to sleep through the night. She'd wake at any sound, rushing to check if he'd fallen, if he was trying to go home, even though he was already there. Her eyes became sunken. Her hands always trembled from exhaustion. She was disappearing along with him. The other siblings started to fade away. "It's too hard to see him like this," they'd say. "I need to take care of my own family too." Visits became rarer, shorter, more forced. It was Anna and I who cared for him, and with each passing day, Anna cared more alone. She became her own father's mother, an unlicensed nurse, an untrained therapist. The weight of 5 adult children fell onto the shoulders of a 52-year-old daughter. "You need a break," I insisted. "I can't leave him alone," she'd reply, and she truly couldn't. Once she went to the pharmacy for medicine and came back to find Dad trying to fix the microwave with a butter knife. Another time, she went to the grocery store and he called 911, saying there were intruders in the house. The police arrived to find a confused old man accusing his own daughter of home invasion. The role reversal happened without us realizing it. Suddenly, I was bathing the man who taught me to bathe myself. Inna was cutting food for the man who taught her how to use a fork and knife. We spoke to him as if he were a child. "Come on, Dad, open wide. It's good. You'll like it." He obeyed docilely, lost in his own forced infantilization. Nights were the worst. He'd confuse day and night, waking at 2 a.m. thinking it was lunchtime. He'd put on his suit to go to work at a company that had closed 15 years ago. One dawn, Anna found him on the porch, in pajamas and a coat, with a suitcase in hand. "I'm waiting for the bus," he explained. "I'm going to visit my mom." It took her an hour to convince him the bus wouldn't come until morning. Little by little, Anna disappeared as an individual. She no longer went out with friends, didn't date, had no hobbies. Her entire life revolved around Dad's medication schedule, doctor's appointments, and nocturnal quirks. When someone asked how she was, she'd answer by talking about him. "He's calmer," or "he didn't sleep last night," as if she herself no longer existed. One night I found Anna crying in the kitchen at 4 a.m. "I can't take it anymore," she whispered. Sometimes I think it would be better if..." She didn't finish the sentence, but we both understood. The guilt of wishing it would end quickly. The guilt of being tired of loving. The guilt of feeling relief when she thought that maybe one day all of this would be over. It was the dirtiest and most human guilt of all, wishing for freedom from her own love. If you've spent sleepless nights awake for someone who didn't even know you were there, this part is for you. "That woman stole my wallet." The accusation echoed through the house one Saturday morning. My father pointed at Anna with a trembling finger, his eyes full of suspicion. Ina, who had woken at 5 a.m. to prepare his breakfast, who cleaned up the pee he'd left on the bed, who cut his food into tiny pieces, was being accused of theft by the man she had dedicated 3 years of her life to caring for. The wallet was in his jacket pocket, as always, but in the confused mind of Alzheimer's, Anna had transformed into a dangerous stranger. "She comes into my room at night," he'd tell the neighbors. "Messes with my things." Our neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, listened with a worried expression. "How awful, Mr. John. We need to be careful with these caregivers." Anna wasn't a caregiver. She was his daughter. A daughter accused of crimes she never committed. The accusations escalated. Anna was a thief, a liar, abusive. According to his deteriorating mind, she prevented him from leaving, hid his food, mistreated him when no one was looking. The reality was the opposite. Anna protected him from getting lost, controlled his diabetic diet, cared for him with infinite patience. But Alzheimer's had transformed care into abuse, protection into imprisonment, love into tyranny. The family began to divide. My siblings, who visited little and knew less, started questioning Anna. "Why is he saying these things about you? Are you being a little too strict?" The very victim of excessive care was suspected of being an abuser. Ina began defending herself against absurd accusations. "I don't mistreat our father. I don't steal from him." As if love were a crime. The last straw came when a neighbor, concerned about the elderly man's well-being, called social services. A social worker appeared at our door on a Thursday afternoon. She was a serious woman in an impeccable uniform who didn't know our story but had the power to judge our reality. She entered the house, looking at everything as if it were a crime scene. "Your father has made some complaints," she told Anna. "He says he's being mistreated, that he's afraid of you, that he wants to leave home but isn't allowed." Anna tried to explain. 3 years of 24-hour care, sleepless nights, sacrificing her own life. The social worker listened politely, but noted everything with skepticism. "We know caring for the elderly is stressful. Sometimes you don't realize when you cross the line." During the visit, Dad was on his best behavior. Lucid, friendly, eloquent. He told coherent stories about his life, made jokes, showed affection for his children. Except for Anna. When the social worker asked about her, he lowered his voice conspiratorially. "That one, I don't know about her. She says she's my daughter, but I don't trust her." Anna was in the room, hearing her own father deny her existence to a stranger. "We'll need to evaluate the situation," the social worker said. "Perhaps it would be better to consider a nursing home, a more neutral environment." Anna felt like she'd been punched. 3 years caring for him, and now he was going to be removed from his home because of his own confused accusations. Alzheimer's wasn't just stealing his mind, it was stealing her dignity. That night, Anna packed her bags. "I can't take it anymore," she cried. "I cared for him for 3 years and became a criminal. He hates me. The family doubts me. The government wants to take him away because of me. I give up." She had reached the limit every caregiver knows. The point where loving hurts more than abandoning. The point where you realize your sacrifice has become your crime. As Anna packed her bags in the bedroom, Dad knocked on the door. "Ma'am," he said gently, "are you leaving?" Anna turned, her eyes swollen. "I am, Mr. John. You don't like me anyway." He looked confused. "But who will take care of me?" And in that moment, Alzheimer's had a cruel minute of clarity. He didn't remember she was his daughter, but he remembered he needed care. He didn't recognize her as family, but he recognized her as a necessity. If you've ever been blamed just for loving too much, tell us about it in the comments. This is a safe space for you. Anna moved into a small apartment across town. We hired a professional caregiver, Mrs. Daniels, a kind 60-year-old woman who treated Dad with technical warmth. She knew how to handle his mental confusions, had professional patience, understood the right techniques. But she wasn't a daughter. And Dad knew it in some mysterious way that the heart recognizes, even when the mind doesn't work. Within 2 weeks, he deteriorated drastically. He became more agitated, more lost, more sad. He constantly asked for that lady who used to live here, Anna, the daughter he had accused and unknowingly driven away. Mrs. Daniels tried to distract him, but he insisted, "She took good care of me. Where is she?" Alzheimer's had erased the accusations, but kept the longing. Anna called every day to check on him, but she didn't come to visit. "I can't," she'd say. "It hurts too much." She was recovering from emotional exhaustion, sleeping through the night for the first time in 3 years, remembering what it was like to have a life of her own. But she was also paying the price of freedom, the guilt of having abandoned someone who needed her most, even if that person had rejected her. One Sunday afternoon, Dad had an agitated spell. He ran through the house looking for his children, saying he was lost, that he wanted to go home, even though he was already home. Mrs. Daniels called me desperate. "He's inconsolable. I don't know what else to do." When I arrived, I found my father sitting on the living room floor, crying like a lost child. "Nobody loves me," he sobbed. "Everyone left." I called Anna. "Please," I pleaded, "just one visit. He's suffering." There was a long silence. "What if he accuses me again?" "Then you leave again," I replied. "But maybe today will be different." She hesitated, took a deep breath. "I'm on my way." An hour later, I heard the key turn in the lock. Ina had kept the keys to the house she no longer considered hers. When Dad saw her, something shifted in his eyes. It wasn't recognition. Alzheimer's had stolen that forever. But it was something more primitive, more true. It was the heart's recognition that doesn't depend on memory. "Hi," Anna said softly. "How are you doing?" He smiled with a sweetness he hadn't shown in weeks. "Better now. You came to see me." They sat on the living room couch. Anna didn't try to introduce herself as his daughter, didn't force memories that no longer existed. She simply stayed there, present. Dad began to tell confused stories about his childhood, mixing eras and people. Anna listened as if they were new stories, nodding, smiling, asking questions. They talked like two strangers who liked each other at first sight. At one point, Anna began to hum a tune our mother used to sing to him when he was sick. It was a simple lullaby, almost a whisper. Dad stopped talking and closed his eyes, listening. Tears began to roll down his face, tears that came from a place deeper than memory. "That song," he murmured. "Someone used to sing that to me." "It's possible," Anna said gently. "It's a beautiful song." When Anna stood up to leave, Dad held her hand. "Miss," he said gently, Can you stay a little longer?" There was a plea in his voice, a vulnerability that broke all her defenses. "I can," she replied, and she stayed. They sat together on the porch, watching the sunset in silence, two strangers united by a love that didn't need names to exist. That night, Anna slept on the living room couch, not because he recognized her as his daughter, but because he recognized her as someone who would stay. The next day, she brought some clothes. The day after, a few more. A week later, she was back, but in a different way. No longer the desperate daughter trying to be recognized, as the person who had chosen to stay with a sweet old man who needed company. Do you believe love can endure, even when memory disappears? Share this story with someone who still believes. 6 months later, Dad woke up one Tuesday morning and no longer remembered how to speak. The words had vanished overnight, as if someone had erased the dictionary from his mind. He would look at us, try to say something, but only confused sounds. Desperate gestures would come out. Alzheimer's had stolen his last tool of communication, his voice. Anna understood his gestures better than anyone. She knew when he wanted water, when he was in pain, when he was afraid. They had developed a secret language made of glances, touches, and whispers. A communication that didn't depend on memory or recognition, but on pure presence. She had become the translator for a man who forgot how to express himself. It was around this time that Anna started writing. Every night, after Dad fell asleep, she would sit at the kitchen table with an old notebook and write down the stories he had told throughout his life. Stories of his childhood in rural Kansas, of working in the big city, of how he met our mom, of how he raised 5 kids with love and firmness. Anna wrote because he could no longer speak, but someone needed to preserve who he was. Today, he tried to tell me about his first job, she wrote. He gestured a lot, smiled, seemed happy remembering. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the pride. Anna became the chronicler of lost memory, the secretary of a man who forgot how to dictate his own history. Page after page, she reconstructed his life from the fragments that remained. The notebook became a loving obsession. Anna researched old photos, talked to elderly neighbors, called distant cousins. She pieced together fragments of Dad's story, like an archaeologist of her own family. He worked 40 years at the same manufacturing plant, she wrote, never missed a day. His boss said he was the most punctual employee they ever had. Stories he no longer remembered, but that deserved to be remembered. One night, I found Anna crying over the notebook. I'm losing the race, she said. Every day he forgets more things, and I can't write fast enough. There's so much only he knew, and now no one else will know. It was the anguish of trying to save an ocean with a leaky bucket. Impossible, but necessary. I decided to help her. I called my siblings, talked to old aunts, rummaged through dusty attics. Together, we began assembling an archive of Dad's life. Photos, letters, documents, testimonies, a memorial to the man he was before he forgot who he was. Each new discovery was a victory against Alzheimer's. Look, I found a picture of him when he was young. I found his old union card. Mrs. Henderson remembered a story. The project became a family ritual. Every week we gathered to add something to Dad's archive. My children, who barely knew him lucid, discovered their grandfather through the stories we preserved. Grandpa was funny, my 8-year-old daughter would say, flipping through the photos. Why doesn't he talk anymore? He does talk, I'd reply, just not with words. And it was true. He spoke through the stories we kept for him. One morning, Dad woke up weaker than usual. His legs no longer obeyed him. His eyes were different, distant, as if he was looking at something only he could see. The doctor was clear. It's a matter of days. Anna spent that entire week by his side, holding his hand, whispering stories from the notebook. Remember when you taught me to ride a bike? You ran behind me yelling, "I won't let go." But you did let go, and I flew. On his last night, Anna opened the notebook to a blank page and wrote, "To the man who forgot his own name, but never forgot to love. His name was John. You were a father, a grandfather, a friend, a hard worker. You built a family with your own hands. You taught us that loving isn't remembering, it's staying. I stayed, Dad. We stayed. And now we remember for you." Dad passed away in the early hours of a Friday morning, holding Anna's hand. She was whispering a story about his first day of school, a story she found in an old letter from our grandmother. He left hearing about the brave boy he was, told by the daughter he forgot to recognize, but never forgot to love. The last sound he heard was his own story, preserved by those who loved him until the very end. If you're caring for someone who no longer knows you exist, share this story. In every town, there's an invisible caregiver, and their love deserves to be remembered. Inna's notebook now has 847 pages. They are stories, pasted photos, transcribed letters, testimonies from people who knew John before he forgot who John was. It's the private museum of an ordinary man who became extraordinary through the memory of those who loved him when he could no longer love himself. Sometimes I read the notebook and find my father between the lines. Not the confused man of his last years, but the dad who taught me to fly a kite, who got mad when I stayed out late, who cried at my wedding. Anna saved that man from total oblivion. She proved that when memory fails, love can become memory. On the last page of the notebook, Anna pasted a photo of us. Our whole family gathered at the last Christmas. Dad still knew our names. Below it she wrote, "John Miller, born March 15th, 1943, died August 23rd, 2021. Between those two dates, he loved so much that he was never truly forgotten. Memory can disappear, but sometimes love remains to remember who we are."